business. He has over 20 years of industrial experience in diesel engines. He started his career in Larsen and Toubro, and then he moved to Quest and Asia Motors, and then moved to Cummins, where he got working in the areas of automotive and off-highway domain. And he was responsible, well, he was in Cummins with the mid-range diesel engines, and of course was very much involved on the program for the VS4. Presently, he's heading the powertrain engineering group of JCB India, and he is responsible to support the powertrain design and development for local and global markets for the JCB. So please, Mr. Anupam Dave.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all of you. And it's my pleasure to be here speaking in front of all of you. And I would like to thank Integer Research for giving me this opportunity to present my views on emissions and the changes which we are going to foresee in the market, which is going to be like 7 to 10 years development in India. So I would like to talk about the off-highway industry. So off-highway industry is basically slightly different what we've been hearing all the day long presentations in different areas of analysis or engineering equipment which goes in, and in terms of the volumes with construction with commercial vehicles or passenger car, we are very different. So as you see around the landscape on the off-highway machines, you have multiple or different applications which work in different areas or different conditions, and at the same time the volumes are very low. So from a looking from a complexity and business perspective, this becomes very challenging, especially when you have to meet the customer target cost as well. So providing the landscape, I'll few areas which have been talked in different sessions across here, which was more on AdBlue focus. In the other area, it was on technology areas. So I would cover some of them, and very in a different perspective, it would be connected to the technology, market requirements, as well as customer view. So my presentation I have divided into 5 sections. The first section talks about overview, which talks about construction equipment industry. How do you see that globally versus locally? Emission changes which are being announced, and kind of like it provides industry very less time to respond to. Then I would talk about some of the technologies. I will touch them very superficially because people know about them in and out today, because BS4 to BS6 people have been discussing all of those scenarios in detail, but definitely I welcome any questions on those that subject as well. As we talk about emission technologies and complexity on engines or machines increasing to a next level, I foresee, or we foresee, that there would be an opportunity to develop or evolve new areas of technology, and that I would cover in alternate forms of fuel and electrification. And at the last, I would end up with my conclusions or inputs based on the discussions we go through. Overview. Indian economy outlook. We have been seeing that from last 3 years we are very positive on Indian economy. It has been consistently growing. It has been in a state where we can say that, okay, although the market behavior or the trends are not very predictable, but the growth perspective has been very evident and very consistent for us. There has been many changes which have really affected the transformation of economy. It can be either on positive or negative, I would say challenging outlook, but the growth has been consistent for India, and it remains consistent. And as we see, as we stand today, we have been seeing that the commercial vehicle and passenger car market is showing positive signs of growth, which was not there earlier. So it's very good situation to be in, definitely competitive as well. So if you look at different areas, India has been consistently doing average growth of 6 to 8% in different areas, and has been showing positive signs of economy. As compared to others which have changed based on the time, and their global scenarios have evolved because of the like supply demand market acceptance to the solutions and so on. So although we had some challenging changes which happened or which impacted economies, we had very positive signs of focus of government on infrastructure, irrigation, mining, which is helping us to evolve better. Covering the overall view of construction equipment market, what we see is the global market as we stand today has grown 20% globally, which is a very good sign. And it's after a long time that construction market globally has grown to a double-digit number or 20%. So which is a very positive sign. We see across the globe is most of the sections are green. Are they growing very rapidly, or they're showing double-digit growth or single-digit growth in like near around 10%, which is very promising. Although the base volume of construction industry in India is very low, and globally is also, like as compared to automotive, is very low. So good signs like China and Russia and Europe, they have shown positive growth. India, we are seeing very steady 15%, 20% growth in this market. So a big change which we all anticipate and which we are talking about today is the emission change which have been announced that October 2020, India go to BS4, Bharat Stage 4 CEV, and for which now covers tractors and construction equipment together. Looking at where we stand on emissions globally. So on globally, if you would see that like US has moved from tier 3 to tier 4 and tier 4 final. Over a period of time, it has been pretty gradual growth or gradual change as they have moved from one emission norm to another, and there has been a transition between all the emissions norms which have changed. Europe, again the same story. They have also followed like in US. There have been gradual changes in the emission norms. As we go to India, the problem or the situation is slightly different. We are making a big change, and we are making a big change very swiftly or very fast. So that brings out new challenges, and definitely there are some impacts which are like the emission changes are a little different in different categories. Especially I'll cover off-highway. So as all of us know that India on automotive segment goes from BS4 in 2017 to BS6 in 2020. Similarly, off-highway or non-road machines are going to change from BS3 to BS4. Although the change time has been significant, but at the same time the change is also very significant in India. Reason being, we are going directly to tier 4 final regulations, which is as stringent as, I should not compare the two industries because the norms are different, the cycles are different, but still the numbers are very close. So we are talking about similar to BS6 emissions we are going to go in construction industry. Just to provide a broader purview, I would speak about like 37 kilowatt and below, all tractors and construction equipment doesn't see any change, which means most of the tractors, which is the tractor industry today, which is sold like 80%, 85% of the market remains as is, which is not good in terms of environmental thought process or positive sign for future development for us. But we make that change in stage 5. So as of now, in 2020, there's no change which is going to happen. As we go to the 37 to 55 kilowatt, which is normally called mid-range in construction, this would be seeing around 90% plus reduction in particulate matters, which is huge, a big step change. So we go down to 0.025 PM level, which is like very much less depending on where you stood, 37, 55, which range you were in earlier. Going 55 kilowatt and above, the change is very significant. And why I say so, that there is a huge reduction in particulate matters, but there is a huge reduction in NOx as well. So we reduce NOx, if you were to look into mathematics figures, were very close to 95-98% of reduction in NOx, which means we are almost touching zero emissions. So with that change, with the numbers which I have talked about, 94% PM reduction and very stringent norms and 55 kilowatt above, and above, pose us to a very big challenge for the industry and for the end customer. The change is significant, and I would like to talk about why the change is significant. If you were to talk about anything which is above 55 kilowatt, the industry would see inclusion of SCRs or DPFs, whatsoever technology they adapt. Actually, SCR is inevitable, so HCR would be there. So in all of that scenarios, the machines which were very simple looking today would change to electronic engines and with aftertreatment, very advanced aftertreatment technologies. We talk about the challenges which our customers or we are going to face is the fuel quality or logistics related to AdBlue. We have been talking about AdBlue since morning here, and we have seen certain challenges which would have to face from quality and like you can say local competition which would evolve, and it would be very different from very organized sector. So all of those things would impact customer or impact OEMs very badly. Now, if I were to talk about technologies, we had in another room the session on like how much fuel pump gets affected, and fuel pump is a major change which is going to happen as we see or we move on to the next stage of emissions. Any area where we are talking about 37 kilowatt and above. So 37 kilowatt and above, you come to common rail technology, which is kind of which is more I would say it provides its own challenge or difficulties to integrate with the fuel quality, how it is transported within India. So that's a challenge which would come to the OEMs. Other points to note which is different in India and it's very important for us to understand is, as I mentioned, 37 kilowatt and below, no change in emissions, which continues to be a good amount of volume, and that doesn't come under any regulations. Then we have two different streams of emissions regulation. One is what it called for wheeled machine, where you talk about the changes going to very stringent levels. The other stream, which is tracked or which is non-wheeled application, doesn't see any emission change. So it's a very complex scenario for an industry to understand or react to it, or for a customer that machine doesn't have a after treatment. Why are you penalizing me or providing me with an after treatment system? So that kind of view would come in as we move on into the market. And the majority of volumes which I've already said has no impact below 37 kilowatt. So as we move on, I'm just going to represent what the change is. So the change is, we currently in off-highway market, mostly some of the players have electronic engines, but mostly are mechanical. From mechanical to you need to develop to bring a product which is electronic common rail, which is itself a very huge development and effort which would be suitable for the end customer. You have to set up your manufacturing and supply chain, which means a lot of investment in that area as well. You have to package the new engine configuration in the same machine, or you have to evolve that machine as well. So a lot of effort on engine and machine integration. And if you are a manufacturer or OE who takes engine from somebody else or another engine manufacturers, you have to start that activity kind of very early in the stage of design or conceptualization stage. So that's a lot of work which is required by the industry. And when we go into the market, you need to be strongly supported by the after sales and service team. And actually people have talked about it, like skill development and the level of involvement which is required in this area is huge. So if I were to look at very simple, crude, easy solution for end customer, is going to become a very complex, very technologically oriented product in 2020. So it's a big change, and it drives a lot of investments and cost of the product. Now, investment is OE's responsibility, cost is customer's responsibility, and there will be a big challenge when we talk about these two coming together at the same time. So that is the impact of emission technologies. And now I'll just go a little detail like what all technologies we have. So people have talked in different forums about this, but just to bring the completeness in the discussion, I'm just putting it through. Some of the 37 to 55 kilowatt options would have DOC as we go into the next stage of emissions. So this is a very preliminary or simple after-treatment device which is required for reducing emissions. Simple passive device. There are not much challenges. Some few challenges which are like thermal stability and regeneration, which is required. Diesel particulate filter, which is a technology which either would be required at stage 4 or stage 5. It would become kind of a mandatory because you start counting the particulate numbers. So it's very important when you go to stage 5, DPF is required. If you go another route other than SCR, then also DPF is the possible route of or solution option. Particle oxidation catalyst or PFF is another passive device which can help you reduce your particulate matter while you are reducing NOx in cylinder. Other forms of technology which help reducing NOx, especially engine out NOx reduction, either done through SCR. Like you can SCR in itself is a very big subject. You can talk about for whatever time you would like to, but basically it is done with the help of an exhaust fluid or AdBlue, whatever you can call it, urea solution, which would help you reducing NOx and converting into N2 and O2. Similarly, other forms of NOx reduction technologies like LNT and NAC, means NOx absorbers, are also available, which do the reduction of NOx, but not to an extent which today's SCR systems are capable of. SCR systems have now become capable to deal with NOx conversion efficiencies. When they started, was 60 to 80% practically available at engine out, at engine out emissions reduction. But now the capabilities are around 90+% conversion efficiency, which is very huge, and that's why this is as an opted route of technology for 0.4 grams of NOx. I will put another purview which is very important when we are standing amongst this big change. The industry is seeing a transformation from mechanical simple engines to highly complex electronic after treatment devices, integrated solutions on powertrain. So when you increase the cost, the second thing which comes in people's mind is, what are you going to give me as benefit as an end customer? And actually, as an end customer, he gets better air and load of cost, which is going to impact his business or operations. So that's one area where he gets concerned about technology cost, and that evolves another route or another form of technology, or gives a platform to evolve new technologies. So as industry, we are sitting here in an era where the change or the transformation is going to take place, and the change or the transformation which is going to take place is going to give us new solutions or new innovative areas which can be leading solutions for the world. So alternate fuels and electrification. So if you talk about today, government of India is very vocal and very straight about making changes in the way the fuel or the emissions are considered. And the evidences are in the newspaper, evidences are in the speeches, evidences are in the policies decisions which are made today, which are saying that you have to find alternate form of energy which might help India to reduce import bill, or to help make the environment better, or to catch up with the industry, so that we are actually almost running at the same pace what we have lost earlier. So there is a lot of impact of fossil fuel bill. There is a lot of impact, a lot of discussions which happen to be talking about electrification. So I'm going to touch base on few things about it, but the simple answer is there's no answer, but one of the simple things which nobody has even able to find today an answer is diesel as a fuel, how much it is replaceable by another forms of energy when it comes to operating cost and the emissions which it brings out. So in today's scenario, the emissions which are coming out of diesel engines are pretty lean and pretty like zero emissions. So they have evolved their technologies. Now it's on the other side how much they evolve the technology so that it becomes beneficial to the customer. Areas which are the key drivers for electrification or for alternate fuels is CO2 reduction, which is actually primarily driving or has driven a lot of work in US and Europe in this area. The second area which really comes in is to reduce dependency on the fossil fuel. This is more India phenomena. Efficiency improvement is again a customer oriented phenomena. And then trend to support means, like, if diesel has evolved or the emission technologies have evolved to reduce emissions or to come to near zero emissions, there has been a lot of work which is happening in passenger car industry, which is saying that you can evolve alternate form of technologies, and especially there were a few presentation on the other side where we saw hydrogen as a possible new fuel or CNG as a new alternate fuel coming up in the market. So, and on electrification, it's trends which are coming on the cost side to reduce the cost of the vehicle. So, coming to the first point, which is more based on fuel economy regulations or CO2 reduction, is like how Europe, America, and China are going to regulate themselves in terms of CO2 reduction. And my apologies, the second part in the central portion below America is not rightly mentioned there. The difference which comes in between the two side, which is Europe and China versus America, America is doing it, I would say, very right way. They are measuring reduction in CO2 from well to wheel configuration, not on the end product, which is very important. So although numbers might look on America to be on higher side for reduction, and still they do not achieve what China or Europe are going to achieve, but they are more substantiated by the approach that it is a total solution to benefit the environment. Whereas Europe, China definitely drive it towards the same philosophy, but in a different way. So this is one of the prime factors which is bringing the technology in terms of passenger car or any other powertrain to reduce the CO2 footprint or to improve fuel efficiency. So it's a very busy slide, and my apologies, but I wanted to cover very quickly the concept of electrification and what it takes, and I'm just trying to ground what diesel versus the thoughts which are running in my mind as well, like how fast diesel is going to deplete and other fuels are going to take over or other forms are going to take over. So the key challenges in the electrification has been more on cost. So if you see the graph which talks about what is the benefit you get or the CO2 reduction you get by incorporating electrification, it may be in the form of hybrid or complete battery pack, whatever the form you use, you have to pay upfront cost, which is important point which actually impacts end customer. Similarly, as you try to drive those costs lower, then it definitely becomes a suitable proposition over a very diesel over a solution which is made of diesel complex technology with after treatment. And if we look at passenger car, yes, I agree with the input that as you go down and the power requirements or the demands are not so aggressive, you are in a situation that you can evolve solutions, battery packs, which can support that. Looking at the right side bottom graph, it talks about if you had the technology which can do electrification. Another point on CO2 is like what is the efficiency or the system gain you get through electrification, and electrification provides a lot of benefit when you're talking about this area, which is your duty cycle is light and you do a lot of start stop, you do a lot of changes in your duty cycle, which changes vehicle from 0 speed to very high speed in a very small period of time. But when you're working on on a very heavy duty cycle. In that scenario, the energy or the exhaust gas energy becomes more powerful, and it provides more better returns. So there is a complexity which is involved when you talk about electrification on a very heavy duty cycle. So this represents, this graph represents that complexity. And for any technology to mature, I'm talking about, it takes time. So I think 2030, if you even start today and you are in a very good situation, the market acceptance by 2030, which is a very tough task which government has set up for itself or for India to achieve that kind of target. But it's very optimistic, and it's important for us to grow in that area. Alternate forms of energy, definitely CNG is very evident, which is we know that as an alternative gas, but there are some other alternate forms like biomass or dimethyl ether or synthetic gas which are coming up, and some of these would be very promising for India as a country, because there are certain things which actually naturally helps us to evolve the technologies or the fuel-based technologies, because either we talk about we create a lot of biomass within ourselves as a country, and that can be used or can be become an evident source of energy if in that scenario would be very helpful for us. Other forms of like dimethyl ether, which can just replace diesel as a fuel, again reduces dependency for this country. With all of this, I would like to quickly summarize and open. As we discussed, global sentiments for construction industry look positive, which is very good for us in terms of being an OEM, and you are under positive pressure to develop better solutions and try to work out and provide good solutions to the customer. The government drive on the alternate form of fuels and energy efficiency is a very positive approach. Reducing emissions has been kind of a I would say subject for discussion for long, which has now been concluded or is in the stage of conclusion. So that's again a positive change, although it's very complex and difficult to achieve. These efforts would help us improve environment for us and for our future. So it's very important steps for us, and it, as I said, that it gives us platform to evolve new solutions or new technologies which would be suitable for customer, and that's an important aspect. As engineers, we need to always identify the right solutions for the customer. So at the end, I would like to say that we being in this era are definitely very fortunate to look at this technology change and changes which are going to happen in the industry, in the market. So it's ready to be, it's a very positive condition to be in, very fortunate to be in to make the transformation or be part of the transformation or change. With that, I would like to thank you and open for any questions if you have.
Thank you, Mr. Dave, for a very good and well-structured presentation. 2 minutes for questions or comments from the floor. So anybody would like to start? So I guess that you have been very clear and everything well understood, but I have a question, and that's a question of because I'm ignorant, in the sense that I'm coming from Europe. In Europe, we don't have a change or a difference between construction equipment that are on tracks or on field. Now, I seem to understood that in India there is this change. Could you just comment on that?
Yeah. So I think it's well, like identified question, and we are even struggling ourselves that like why this changes here in India. But basically, I understand the reason why the change is because from initial stages, our norms have been like you can say governed by Ministry of Road and Surface Transport, and they only cover the vehicles which come on road, so which are tired and which go with registration number. Now, if you were to talk about power tillers or any other harvesters or excavators, they do not come on road, and when they do not come on road, they are not under any industry or purview of any industry. So there are no emissions norm for them.
Thank you for the clarification. I was quite surprised.
Yeah,
Sorry.
even we are surprised. You're so in the same page. Yeah.
Okay,